Værsgo, Henrik.
Tak for det. Dear speakers, colleagues, and guests, on behalf of SDU, I bid you all a very warm welcome to this kickoff event for Horizon Europe. The philosopher Francis Bacon formulated an ideal for science around 400 years ago. He said that science should be for the benefit and use of life. This ideal has never been more important to strive for in an age where countless global issues are knocking on the door, issues that call for solutions here and now. This applies to the entire sustainability agenda, and it applies to climate change, which is one of the most serious problems in human history. On top of this, we are seeing growing economic inequality, the spread of misinformation online, massive refugee flows, loss of biodiversity, and of course the current pandemic, which, even though vaccines have arrived, is still spreading and shutting down entire communities. For all these reasons, the search for truth has never been more important. Research has never been more important. Education has never been more important. And the very power of change, of which universities are the unique carriers, has never been more important. As a university, we must contribute to societal development and accept our social responsibility. It is, in fact, our raison d'etre. This is where we have our part to play in the world. In concrete terms, this means we must have a strong focus on basic research, on applied research, and the interdisciplinary efforts that are necessary in solving the great societal challenges. This also applies to the essential cornerstones of Horizon Europe, which on January 1st replaced the former Horizon 2020. My wish for Horizon Europe and for your important work is, in the words of Francis Bacon, that it shall be for the benefit and use of life. In terms of more practical matters, I can tell you that over the course of SDU's internal kickoff event this week, we will outline the different types of funding and collaboration opportunities that the Horizon Europe Framework Program offers. These sessions have a practical focus and are designed for information of researchers. Today, however, we have invited everyone to partake in this public webinar that celebrates science and marks the beginning of a new European framework program. To set the scene, we have invited distinguished speakers that outline the overall research policy landscape that will shape the Danish and European research and innovation agenda for the coming years. Today's Q&A function is open for Zoom participants, but unfortunately not for streaming viewers. Zoom viewers are more than welcome to post questions for the speakers during the entire webinar. We will collect the questions for the Q&A session after the presentations, where ample time has been set aside to answer your questions. And with these words, I'm very pleased to introduce a video greeting from the Danish Minister of Climate and Energy and Public Utilities, Mr. Dan Jørgensen. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Denmark is only responsible for 0.1% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. So really, one might ask, why are you so eager to bring your emissions down? If you look at it isolated, it probably won't affect the climate that much what you do in a small country like Denmark. But we believe that if we are very ambitious, we can actually make a difference, also on a global level. We've set a target of reducing our CO2 emissions by 70% in 2030. By doing that, we force ourselves to innovate. We force ourselves to create new solutions, new technology that the entire world can use. We've done this before. In 1991, we were the first country on the planet to establish an offshore wind farm. At that time, it probably wasn't a very rational thing to do. It was a very expensive way of creating energy. But because we did it, and because others have followed, this means that we are today in a situation where offshore wind can compete with coal and nuclear power in price in most places on the planet. So the reason why we've set ourselves these very ambitious targets is that we want to drive innovation. This, obviously, is not something we as a government can do alone. We can set the framework, we can allocate the resources, and then we need to look to people like you. We need to look to the universities, the researchers, the scientists, the people that have to help us create the new solutions. Denmark has decreased our CO2 emissions by 38% since 1990. In the same period of time, we've doubled the size of our economy. So we've shown that it can actually be done. You can set yourself very ambitious targets and at the same time be a country with a high living standard, a country that's competitive on the global market. I wish you all a very good conference.
Thank you very much to our minister. My name is Tom Clausen, and I'm part of the SDU support team, the research support team as SDU. And we are very excited to kick off this Horizon Europe program. We think we have three very exciting days. And now we have seen the famous bookshelf of the minister. So now we're ready to really kick off with research. I'm very pleased from the whole team of SDU to kick off this new program. And I don't know how you feel out there, but a new program is something special. I mean, Horizon 2020 was fantastic, but it's like, you know, when you have a new thing, if you have a new car, yes, the old car was nice, but there is something about, you know, having a new program. It's like a computer that you boot a new computer, everything is fresh and there's new money, and we're all, I don't know, we are very excited, at least in the research support staff, about this adventure. It's 7 years ahead of us. There are so ample opportunities in this program, and we cannot wait to get started. So I'm very pleased that we have two keynote speakers to kick off this first session. And I just want also to say that, you know, we have 3 days with very exciting seminars and information sessions. So I hope everyone will, you know, take the opportunity. This is, of course, the first chance to really get into the nitty-gritty details of Horizon Europe. So I would like to welcome the first keynote speaker, which is Connie Hedegaard. I believe that I really don't need to make a very big presentation, but of course you deserve one. But I'm quite sure that many people know you. I've looked at your CV and I can see that you, some years ago, you got a degree in literature and history. This is where it all started. And then you moved to be a journalist at a famous Danish newspaper. You've been head of Danish radio news, but where people probably know you more is that you have been member of parliament in 2 periods. You have been a minister several times, and you have also been a European commissioner for climate in the Barroso Commission. So, I mean, they're of course very interesting. I'm sure you have stories from that as well, but that's not on today's topic. But now you have many also interesting tasks, and one is you're the chair of the board for the EU Commission Mission Board on Adaptation to Climate Change. I'm sure you will come into this. And missions is one of the new babies. This isn't one of the new kids on the block, because we have, when I said we're very excited, there is a new program. But there are many things which are the same as it was in Horizon 2020, which is another good thing, because people know the ERC, European Research Council, and it gives confidence that I can say, you know, this goes on and so on. But of course, there's a new program and there's something new, which is called Mission. So we're very excited to hear about this, because this could be a new groundbreaking tool. So very warm welcome. The floor is yours, Connie Hedegaard.
Thank you very much, Tom, and for sure I will come back also to the missions. But thank you very much for inviting me for this kickoff conference. I dare say that the different headlines that you gave me were sort of quite rich. You've asked me to say something about the university's role in the knowledge society, the implications of internationalization for research and innovation, and the big European research policy development trends, particularly with a view to the European Green Deal and sustainability, and a number of other things. I'll try to cover this, but let's first start with the first one, the university's role in the knowledge society. Until recently, I must admit I was quite concerned. Concerned that the respect for, the understanding for knowledge, for science, for facts was eroding in too many quarters. It was being undermined in an ever bigger part of society as I saw it. And there was this tendency, it was replaced by what they in Norway call synsning, that I feel, I think, I believe. And that was quite a paradox at a time where we need knowledge and science and facts more than ever in order to cope with the ever increasing complexity of society, of politics, of business, of basically everything. So I think that Trump illustrated the tendency for this in the most pure form. And I also think that we have seen what it can lead to and what kind of polarization we were heading for. You could say, while in other places of the world we saw this very visibly, in Denmark maybe for some years the trend towards the universities from the political side was more sort of a tendency to measuring a lot of things in quantitative terms. There was a growing, I feel, negative perception among policymakers that these universities, they were too elitist. Was it really needed? And all this, you know what I mean? That was sort of where the discussion was heading. And then came COVID. And I mention this because I think that there is a chance here in all the negative things to say about COVID, obviously, and the pandemic, but actually the fact that suddenly we had to manage and handle a pandemic showed to people why we need science. For obvious reasons, why we need natural sciences, the epidemiologists, the biologists, those who can develop a vaccine, those who can find out what is this disease, how do we cope with it, also the doctors, the medicines, those who could treat it. So it's clear that we needed natural scientists. But I think it also illustrates very well how we need more than that. We need the political sciences, we need the economists, when we need to model, for instance, now, how would we reopen a society, how to do that in the most intelligent manner? Again, you have to turn to the scientists, to the people who actually know things, the people who sort of possess some facts and can contribute facts. But more than that, I also think that the pandemic has shown to us how important social sciences are, that it's not enough just with natural sciences. We need to understand better behavior. We need to understand better how to use digital tools in a way that can be understood and applied by people. Communication is extremely important. I think we will have more and more focus now on what is really well-being. People seek back to some profound values. I think that we will even understand why we need philosophers and their contribution to the debate, because people have reflected more than normal during the pandemic about sort of man's relation to nature. And also we have seen that one thing is to provide knowledge, but how to bring it into play, how to cooperate around finding the solutions, new governance systems, new forms of cooperation, even more cooperation than normal between private, public sectors. I mean, we have really seen it unfold why it is that we really need universities, why we need research, why we need people with in-depth knowledge. So I also think that what we saw with the COVID-19 and the pandemic, it has illustrated how expensive to society it is to ignore the warnings of science, how expensive it is to meet warnings unprepared, meet challenges unprepared. Yet, on the other hand, we have also seen that change is possible, even fast change. Things that we 1 year ago, actually still 1 year ago, would have said it's not going to happen, for instance, in Denmark or in Europe. Now it's happening. We have been living through it. And also we have seen that leadership, political leadership, but also other kinds of leadership really pays off. I think that all this has provided some really valuable lessons learned. Lessons learned that hopefully we can translate and bring with us now when we have to address the huge climate challenge and make the green transition just being not something we talk about, but actually how to make it happen. And contrary to the pandemic that comes in the first wave, the second wave, maybe even a third wave, but then at least we expect it to sort of go away. Climate change, the sustainability challenges, the challenge to transform into a circular economy, it's not just something that will go away after the first or second or third wave. It will stay with us for decades and must be addressed. So I would really hope that what we have been living through over the last 12 months will give a revival in the respect towards universities, towards research, towards knowledge. As I see it then, there are some challenges that the universities need to be able to address, and maybe also address better than have been the case so far, and I will come back to that. But first, let's look at the European program as we're celebrating today. Now, I understood from Tom that the former Horizon 2020 is now baptized the old car. And I was present as a commissioner when we made the budget. That sort of was a budget up to the start of this year, up to the end of 2020. And even in that 7-year budget, we actually had an earmarking of the research money in the EU budget. 35% should be earmarked for climate-related purposes, should go in that direction. I think that has been a huge opportunity for a country like Denmark, because we have a lot to offer in this field. And we have also that our universities have been really, really good at sort of getting money out of these programs. Actually, we are getting around 2 billion Danish kroner each year out of the European research budgets. And today, actually, it equals 8% or a little more of the public support for research in Denmark. So we're not talking about a tiny bit, it's substantial. And I think that when now this is being even more so still with 35% earmarking of the Horizon Europe for sort of the green transition for climate related purposes, there is a huge potential still for the Danish universities because we are so well positioned. On top of that, we also saw the 27 heads of states backing the recovery package, I would say the historic recovery package, which is not particularly aimed at research, but still, I think that that sort of goes into the same direction, that there will be an ever stronger focus in years to come from the EU side in delivering on the climate targets, the green ambitions, the European Green Deal. One of the novelties in this huge recovery package, a total of 750 billion euros. 750 billion euros. One of the novelties was that 1/3 of all that will have to go for climate-related purposes. The member states will have to come up and deliver their plans for how they will spend this money no later than 1st of April. Let's see if that deadline is kept, but that is the plan. And then 1/3 is for climate. But the interesting thing and the real novelty was that for the remaining part of that money, the other 2/3, they apply do no harm principle, so that we have a historic chance actually now to make a substantial move towards delivering on all the green promises. I think that is interesting because there is a historic opportunity to create innovation at a scale that we haven't seen before if we really use this opportunity. And it was clear already when setting the targets in the European Green Deal that the innovation strategy, the research strategy was coupled very much to the industrial strategy and the whole way we think competition and job creation and economic growth in Europe. So there is a really, really solid foundation. Also, the other very big priority in the programs will be digitalization. So I think that for a country like Denmark, who will have cutting edge technologies to offer and knowledge to offer in both the green area and in digitalization, there is a fantastic opportunity if we could maybe also be a bit smarter in coupling these two strong positions that we have there. And I think for SDU, with the whole robotics and artificial intelligence and what have we around SDU and Funen, there should be maybe a really particularly interesting perspectives. But in this Horizon Europe, it's right, as Tom was mentioning, that there is this other novelty. The 5 missions has been created. You may have seen already that in this Horizon Europe, there is already a Green Deal call of 1 billion euros that has sort of been put out there. To be frank, I see it very much as a placeholder for the 5 missions. And that is at least how it's seen internally, that if the missions will get the final green light, then there is already the first call out there that could sort of get the missions up running. These missions, what is that about? Well, it's to mention just briefly, there is 1 mission around soil, 1 around oceans, 1 around cities, 1 around cancer, and 1 about adaptation to climate change and societal change. As the mission I'm chairing is called. The whole idea behind this was, how come that we cannot be better in Europe to pool our resources and really address in a much more coherent manner some of the really, really big challenges that we know we are all facing. As you can see, when I mention soil, ocean, cities, adaptation, you can see 4 of the 5 missions somehow has a link into the green transition and the European Green Deal. I must say that it has been interesting for me to see sort of this process. It's a board of 15 people, a very, very small secretariat that should sort of come up with, okay, if we're going to make, for instance, Europe adapt to climate change and societal change, what is needed? Where are the gaps? Where are the knowledge gaps? What will who need to do? It's an extremely challenging exercise. But so far, each mission has provided a scoping paper. You can find it on the homepage, and you can see where the respective missions are heading. And those 5 scoping papers was given the green light in November by a group of commissioners. So that now where we are is that we need now to come up with implementation plans, specific implementation plans, exactly what do we want to do, who should do it, and so on and so forth. And that will be ready before summer. And the hope is that then the Commission will give its final green light by this July. I can tell from the mission that I'm chairing that adaptation and societal change, there are lots of technical things we need to do in Europe, but I think that some of the maybe more interesting perspectives will also be, how do we be much better looking at behavior aspects, and what about governance? Now, I'll not be too lengthy on that, but I can tell you, when you really look at how are we doing as a whole European Union, how will we really make this transformation? into a green economy, and how will we carry the citizens as we go, you really have to think through the whole governance system. And not just how we get rid of the silos, but also how can we work different policy layers, for instance, together in a much more efficient and smart manner. So I think that behavior and governance, that would maybe be some of the areas that could be interesting also for Danish universities to sort of be aware of, because there, I guess that there will be some good potentials. Plus also, again, digitalization. How could the digital potential be exploited much better when it comes to climate sustainability and the green transformation? I think that some of you who have followed this maybe noticed in the beginning that it was very much also about doing outreach to citizens and find out what should be the content of these missions. I can say that as I see it now, we are very much also back to how to come up with something that within a relatively short time frame can be translated into specific calls. And there I can only say to you out there that it is not too late to try and make an impact on, come up with some input as to where in the respective missions can you see some potential. And I mean, it's an old story, but it's just easier if already you get your keywords into sort of the work now. It may also be easier to harvest from it later on. So I think that try to influence wherever you can, also through the normal procedures with the Danish Ministry and the Shadow Group for Research and what have we. It is needed. But it is clear that the Commission, the member states, they have really made everything about climate and sustainability as sort of a core of their economic development agenda. It's about industrial competitiveness, it's an innovation agenda, and it's 80+ billion euros over the next 7 years. I think if people say, yeah, but will this stay? Will this still be a priority when we are 1 year down the road and the COVID-19, the economic toll of that sort of is felt? Will they still be there focused on the green transition? My bet is yes, they will, because the Ursula von der Leyen Commission and the European Parliament, it has been sort of the criteria for them. It is what they will be measured up against, and it's simply built in now as a new narrative for Europe that we will make this green transition. So I'm actually in no doubt that this will stay. COVID-19 could have killed the agenda, but so far, as we all know, it did not do it. And I think that there is another thing working in the same direction, and that is that the finance community, not the least the European finance community, but to a larger and larger degree, the global finance community, they really start to change their priorities. They go out from sort of black investments, move into the green investment area. And I think that very soon you will see that reflected also on where you can get external money, because more and more companies are going in this direction. Actually, as late as yesterday, I saw that ExxonMobil, for the first time in decades, came out with a significant deficit. And yes, 2020 was a difficult year, probably if you are living from oil and fossil fuels, but still, it's more than just sort of a quick, fast trend. It's something that is really changing substantially. But then let me come to some of the challenges that I see. Because just to start with a very practical one, when we are talking about Europe and the research program and Horizon Europe, I think that there is one big obstacle that we must solve in Denmark. As many of you will probably know, Denmark offsets EU grants 1-to-1. When we are successful getting money out of the EU system, then it will be sort of deducted in the other end, so that we will have less from the finance ministry, to put it in that simple way. In my view, that is a plain stupid incentive structure. I saw as late as yesterday that Dansk Erhverv, the industry organization, sort of asked, what is the point in this? Every time a Danish researcher manages to get money from EU research programs, his or her colleagues will be punished, because then there will be less money for the rest. I think that we can all see that that's in order to keep sort of the 1% public financing for research in Denmark. And I can also, as a former minister, see that the government and parliament will say, yes, but we have already paid through EU, because the EU money comes from somewhere. But I really think that if you want the research community to go more for internationalization, work more together with others, this is a hurdle, this is an obstacle that we should really work together to remove. Also, I think that if we really have this, as we have the very ambitious target of reducing in Denmark by 70% climate CO2 emissions by 2030, these are the kind of obstacles that urgently must be removed. I've seen in Norway, they are actually every year setting aside a substantial amount of money on their national budget so that they can top up, not just sort of do the same, but they even top up when a researcher gets money out of the EU systems. And that is even for a non-EU member. My second challenge I would mention is that already, and I already stressed a bit upon this, already in the first Horizon Europe Green Deal call, you can see that there has been mentioned 8 thematic areas. Maybe Patrick later will talk more about these, and 2 horizontal areas. And there again, it's very much about strengthening knowledge and empowering citizens. So I think also there's something to be aware of. One of the really, really big challenges in Europe in the years to come will be, how do we align our green climate ambitions with avoiding polarizing our citizens? So I think this empowering citizens, more deliberative democracy, new ways of getting more people into the public conversation, that is also something that will play quite a significant role, will be my bit, when we get both what comes out of the different missions, but also when we see how they want to prioritize Horizon Europe as such. And again, the sooner one can start to sort of prepare and be ready for these priorities, probably the better. And again, I think that shows that it is not just about technologies. Of course, they must be developed, and it's important, big technologies and hydrogen and power tracks and all the things we're talking about. But it is also about social science. It's also about behavior, governance, and it emphasizes how important it is not just to talk about interdisciplinarity, but actually find models to make it work, to really make it work in order to sort of be better, to faster shortcuts, to stronger solutions. I would ask you a question for you to consider. Are we at the Danish universities, and I say this also as a chairman of all universities, so it's also targeted towards myself in that sense, but are we good enough at somehow benefiting from what the humanities and what arts can contribute? I think we've been really good in the climate discussion to focus on the natural sciences check, and to a certain degree also to the economic sort of disciplines. But could we do more to bring arts and social science, the humanities into the picture, and could they themselves do more to sort of make themselves relevant in this context? I think for a frontrunner country, here is an area where we could probably differ from what many others are doing. My third point is, are you, generally speaking, good enough to bring knowledge into play. I really think this is a key thing. And I say this also with the background from policymaking, because I have this, and you can call it a hobby horse, but I have this idea that sometimes policymakers come too late. Sort of what they decide is sometimes, and I guess many of you would agree with that, it's sometimes as if it's not based on the most recent knowledge. How come that we have ended up there? And I think one of the reasons is that the administrative people, the civil servants, they are extremely pressed on time, extremely busy. Only 10 years ago, they would sometimes have time to follow sort of the scientific literature or whatever. They do not have a lot of time for that these days. So my point is, it's not enough as a researcher just to have published your findings. If you really want your findings to contribute to whatever society is trying to do, the universities will have to think carefully about how can we be even better at bringing knowledge into play. I think that is absolutely essential for society, but I also think that it is essential for the policymakers to continue to support, also economic support, to the universities and to research. I think that there is no doubt it's really a difficult discipline how to do that. It's easy to ask for it, but how to do it. Because, for instance, it does not count in the rankings. And how will you have the time to do this meaningfully? I came across an example. I was involved in something at Oxford University where Professor Connie Hedegaard has made a very, very interesting theory on strategic intervention points. When do you, for instance, in the green transition, what are the real strategic intervention points where it makes sense to go in as a policymaker? He had it published on a Friday in a very, very esteemed sort of international magazine, scientific magazine. But he was afraid because that was a day where something also happened to Brexit. So how would anybody know about this theory? And I found out that even at Oxford University, they do not have a very professional way of helping their researchers, the most esteemed researchers, to bring knowledge into play. I really think there's something here we should look at. My fourth point, and I have 6 and then I'm finished, but my fourth point is the Danish government has done something, you could say it's similar to the mission approach that we have seen now from Europe, with sort of this green research strategy, the grønne forskningsstrategi, and where they have made some sort of calls, power to X, carbon capture, storage and use, how to reuse and reduce plastic waste, and then one on climate and environment friendly agriculture and food production. I see it as a government, society that has a call to the research community to say, help us. I know that some would say, is it an attack on the freedom of researching and all this? I don't see it like that. I see it on the contrary, just as Rector was mentioning in his welcome, it's the raison d'etre of the universities to contribute to solve problems, to really show solutions. At Aarhus University, for instance, as you know, we are very much in the field of agriculture. So we thought, why don't we pool our resources and do a center on this, a really coherent center. But I thought it was really important, why not make it a national center? Instead of we are in different sort of, some good people there, why don't we look at it in a more sort of holistic national way? Why don't we pool the best people? I think, and that is my point here, I think that we must really think hard in the Danish university community. How can we sometimes cooperate, not just across disciplines, and silos, but also across institutions. Because I think that was what was behind sort of the mission thinking in the EU, was a recognition that in order to be better positioned towards an increased competition from China, from Korea, from Japan, from elsewhere, we must be better at cooperating. And I think that also goes for a small nation like Denmark. So one could, of course, also wish that the public grants should even more encourage for cooperation. But I think at least that what they have done with the Green Research Strategy is a step in that direction. I've seen it also in the business community. Even some of the biggest businesses in Europe now, they are starting to work across normal competitive dividing lines in order to develop and make innovation. So I think it's a bigger trend. My fifth point is a dilemma that I really do not know how we do solve. But there is an acceleration in society, an acceleration of many sorts of things, and the policy decision speed is sort of ever accelerating. So the policymakers or the people in business or wherever, they have a need for faster and faster answers, to put it a bit black-white. But how can we as universities cope with an ever accelerating society when sort of part of our identity is to have time to be slow, to have time to reflect and go deep? It's hard to align these trends without losing, and it's hard to sort of respond to that ever acceleration without losing something essential in what characterizes a university. But nonetheless, I think that there is a dimension there that the universities really need to think about. There is a clash with two different time dimensions, but I think it's extremely important to address it. And I really think that the job is to find ways to contribute with knowledge and facts in a digestible form, and to do it timely, not to come after the decisions have been taken, but to do it timely. I think that that is what Europe is really trying to do with some of the novelties they have in the Horizon Europe, and the way that they are earmarking many of the money, also in the recovery program and things like that. But for sure, it's easier said than done. In the end, I think that the whole competitiveness of Europe and the growth and the well-being of citizens will depend on whether we will be better at aligning these different perspectives. And my last point, you could say that's a low-hanging fruit, because I've also been asked to sort of say, what about this trend with climate, sustainability, circular economy? Will that stay? And I hope you have understood from what I've said so far. I really believe that, yes, it will stay. It's not just the trend disappearing. But I think that it is important that this new big challenges of our time, that is to a large degree reflected in curricula. For instance, just as an example, I think that if you talk about the studies of economy, nobody should be able to graduate from any education without the most basic understanding of the sustainability challenges seen from the lens of your field. In the European university tradition, Bildung has always been essential. In my view, in the 21st century, no one can pretend to be a civilized individual without the most profound understanding of the climate and sustainability challenges. And somehow, therefore, the curricula must sort of bear this in mind. So in conclusion, the COVID pandemic marks a potential, I believe, for a revival of the support for, the understanding for, the respect for knowledge and for science. I think that the climate change challenge illustrates the need for help to find and identify, to invent, to apply and get acceptance of solutions. And as I see it, the European Green Deal, Horizon Europe as we know it now, and the Danish sort of ambitious targets in a domestic setting, that will be the agenda setter framing and the framing that provides a huge opportunity for forward-leaning universities. I think that with Horizon Europe now, the potential has been sort of presented. It is huge. And now I think that the universities must help to deliver on all the strong ambitions. I think we are in a very, very bad place if we don't, but I also think that those universities who really understand this and try now both to impact the cause that will come, but also are ready to sort of chip in when they come, they will also be best positioned in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Connie. I mean, this was at least for me, very inspirational speak. I'm overwhelmed. I mean, this was fantastic. I think it also gave us a lot of food for thought. A lot of things where you asked also SDU to contribute, but you came all around many important topics. I think you also were very, very timely because we have a strict timing. So I suggest now that I introduce the next keynote speaker, because I don't see, immediate questions. I myself have a lot of questions, but I think we should take them. I know you were there until at least 5 to 11, but thank you very much. This was really good. I want to go along. I want to go into the engine room of the Commission, and in the engine room of the Commission, there where the things are developed, where the engine are boiling, the things are moving, thoughts are being done. There we have Patrick Child, and Patrick Child is the Deputy Director General in the Research DG. So this is the DG in the Commission that is responsible for the Framework Program for Research and Innovation. I have studied a bit on what you have been doing before, Patrick, and I know you're a mathematician, which I believe can be useful. I also saw you in your young career, you did some operational research on inland revenue. This is not the topic for today, but I found this has probably been interesting. You have worked your way through different cabinets, Chris Patton, Birgitta Ferrer-Wallner, and now you are in the DG Research. So very welcome to you, to SDU, and let's hear a little bit about your thoughts about the new Horizon Europe.
Tom, thank you very much, and very happy to be here and have this opportunity to be part of this extremely timely event organized by the University of Southern Denmark, following yesterday's official launch of the Horizon Europe Research and Innovation Framework Program, led by our Commissioner Maria Gabriel and the Portuguese presidency. And I'm humbled to be speaking after Connie Hedegaard, who not only is playing the role of leadership that she's described in the Horizon Europe mission on climate adaptation, but also has set the scene for this discussion with a virtuoso presentation of the different challenges and issues that we are facing in Europe in this difficult post-COVID moment, but as we focus on the future green and digital transitions, which are so necessary for our future economic prosperity and competitiveness. And in speaking to you today briefly, I just wanted to focus perhaps on three main topics. I mean, firstly, to say a word about the incredibly impressive performance of Denmark's research community and the Danish universities in particular at the European level in research and innovation. Secondly, to update you a little bit on where we've got to on the preparations for the launch of Horizon Europe, we hope in the next weeks now. And then finally, to say a word about how that all fits into the wider landscape of what we're trying to achieve in strengthening and further developing the European research area in what we hope will be a sort of positive post-COVID environment. So firstly, my first message to touch on Denmark's performance as a research and innovation leader in Europe. As we've heard, Denmark, I think, stands out as a country with talented researchers and innovators with huge potential to create impactful research and innovation ecosystems with a really major contribution in a number of key areas, ranging from the European Green Deal agenda and the outstanding work and the sort of commercial leadership that Denmark has in the wind energy sector, for example, but also in many other areas, including digital technologies, health systems, and other topics. And so we think that your continuing contribution to the European recovery and the green and digital transitions that lie ahead will be absolutely fundamental. According to the European Innovation Scoreboard, Denmark is one of the innovation leaders in 2020, well above the EU average, and your innovation performance has increased by 1.7% in the last year, so correcting a bit of a decline that we saw in the last few years. And on our global innovation index, Denmark ranks at 7th position out of 126. So we're a really outstanding and inspiring performance. And that's reflected also in the success rates of Danish proposals under our research and innovation program Horizon 2020. Where the overall Danish success rate is 15.7%, comfortably above the EU average of 13.6%. And in addition to that, you also achieve great results when it comes to funding very good quality programs that are assessed under our evaluation systems for research and innovation, but when there's not enough money in our budget for those things to be picked up by the European structural funds under what we call the Seals of Excellence program, where Denmark rates also very highly in the number of successful projects which have been picked up and funded under the structural funds. So Denmark is, I think, an impressive and trailblazing example for the rest of Europe. But we see that, as in many other member states, the level of public investment in research and innovation is stagnating. And the business expenditure in research and innovation, even before the challenges of the present COVID crisis, are lagging behind our main competitors. And overall, the goal that we've set for 3% of EU GDP to be invested in research and innovation is unfortunately still not being met. And so while I think in the European Union, we can be rightly proud of the really amazing results that we achieve in the areas of basic research, creating the ideas, the raw materials for our future sort of innovation successes, we often fail to capitalize adequately on what we are doing. And that we see good ideas that are coming out of universities and research organizations in Europe being picked up and exploited in other parts of the world where perhaps the business environment, or at least the sort of transition from the research labs into the startups, SMEs, and commercial exploitation is easier or more natural. And that's something that we really want to focus on as we look ahead into the opportunities that we see opening up under Horizon Europe. And so that brings me, I think, to my second point, which is to give you a bit of an overview of where we are and what we're trying to achieve with Horizon Europe, which is for us, I think, the most ambitious research and innovation program that we've ever had. The final figures that were agreed by Europe's leaders for the overall budget over the next 7-year period, 95.5 billion euros, can make a really powerful contribution to shaping Europe's future. And as I said, the most ambitious program that we've ever seen. As Connie has mentioned earlier, a very significant part of this funding will be targeted on actions to support the green and digital transitions of our societies and ensuring a sustainable recovery from the global COVID pandemic. We have a headline objective of 35% of our overall spending being dedicated to climate action in particular, which is above the target for the overall EU budget as a whole. And so we really hope that Horizon Europe will be able to create new opportunities for the world of tomorrow, building out of the challenges of today. And so investing in research and innovation through Horizon Europe will, we think, help us to steer transition in Europe towards a sustainable, fair and prosperous future, a cleaner and healthier planet, and the well-being of our citizens. And I think that the dialogue and engagement with citizens, again, a point Connie very powerfully made, is something that we as a scientific community need to get better at in the future. If we want to be policy relevant, if we want to contribute to the evolution of our policy debates and our societies, we need to engage in new and more direct ways with our citizens. And that's one of the things that we are trying to do as we build Horizon Europe on the successes of Horizon 2020 and our previous research and innovation framework programs. I would say Horizon Europe is an evolution, not a revolution. We retain, of course, the overriding emphasis on excellence, that is the sort of hallmark and the defining ambition of European research. We will continue to have a three-pillar structure as we've had under Horizon 2020. The first pillar on excellent science, covering, of course, the vitally important work of the European Research Council, which I should say, after all the budget discussions, will remain the largest single component of the programme, helping us therefore to maintain our record of global achievement and excellence in fundamental research in particular. Then there's a second pillar addressing global challenges and industrial competitiveness, and that's where we find the sort of clusters of activities around our main thematic priorities, whether it's the health program, which has achieved such amazing success in the recent development of the vaccines for COVID, in the European Green Deal, where we have given a real boost under Horizon 2020 also to the Green Deal call, which has just closed, and we've had an amazing response of over 1,500 really high quality proposals coming from the 8 themes in that Green Deal call. And of course, digital industrial competitiveness, as well as a continuing strong cross-cutting interest on the social sciences and humanities, which, as increasingly with research, we sort of push the boundaries of, how we want societies to transform and adapt to big global issues like climate change. We need to understand much more and build into the upstream thinking of what we're doing a real emphasis on the socioeconomic consequences of what we're doing, and how that is sort of impacting on people's lives, and that's something that needs to be further developed. And the third pillar under Horizon Europe is around innovative Europe, and this is where we really want to build on what I was saying earlier is our perhaps most striking weakness, which is how do we make sure that the excellent science, the excellent research that we're doing in Europe is translated and exploited to commercial opportunities and innovative successes and success stories in Europe. In terms of the changes that we're going to see under Horizon Europe, a number of really important new developments. I mean, firstly, and linked to my last point on innovation, we are creating a new institution or a new sort of an agency called the European Innovation Council, which is specifically designed to sort of break the mold in terms of the way that we support innovation and innovative companies through startups, scale-ups, and really having a completely different model for how we try and identify and support bottom-up opportunities for innovative solutions. Secondly, in Horizon Europe, we have this new concept of missions, really pay tribute to the work of Connie Hedegaard and the other distinguished leaders who have helped us by chairing the mission boards, which have produced a series of really thought-provoking and challenging proposals at the end of last year, and where we're now working on sort of future implementation plans for their further developments. But there, as well as promoting interdisciplinary collaborations, what we really want to do is trying to address head-on some of the main societal challenges that the European citizens can relate to directly. So, I mean, climate adaptation is a very obvious and relevant theme at the moment. I mean, what we're doing on cities, I've personally been very much involved in the cities mission and the challenge of decarbonisation in urban environments, which is absolutely fundamental if we're to achieve our climate goals. We have a mission on cancer. We have a mission on soils and clean and sustainable food production, and we have a mission on oceans and addressing the really major challenges that we face in oceans and waterways. So that's a second important new dimension. And at the same time, we're also working hard to streamline the way that we work in partnership, in particular with industry, through the joint undertakings that we have in areas like hydrogen, clean aviation, innovative medicines, and other areas where working hand in hand with industry is vitally important if we're to seize the opportunities for commercial success for the future. Broader novelties in Horizon Europe. We're really working much harder to ensure synergies between what we're doing in research and innovation and other EU-funded programs and national programs, and I think that the missions will provide, among other things, a focus for that as well. And we are trying to improve and encourage the broad participation across all member states of the European Union, supporting countries to reform and level up their research performance to the best levels that we see in member states. And finally, and very important, we are also bringing a new approach to association with third countries, so to try and extend the cooperation and the institutionalized cooperation between Horizon Europe and important countries in other parts of the world, moving beyond our traditional partners where we've seen great success, of course, in countries in our immediate neighborhood like Switzerland, Norway, Israel, and others, but also to take that to other relationships with other leading partners globally. And of course, our future relationship with the United Kingdom as a third country now will be an important part of that. And I think the very good news about the Brexit deal that was concluded just before the Christmas holidays was that there will be a full association of the UK in virtually all aspects of Horizon Europe, which I think is very good news for the universities and research community in the UK, of course, but also I think great news for the many well-established relationships that exist between EU universities and researchers and their colleagues and partners in the UK. In terms of where we are now in the preparation of Horizon Europe, I mean, we are working hard to finalize the strategic plan. This is a first strategic overview of what we want to achieve for the program for the next 3 years, so 2021 to 2024. We've been working hard to co-create this program with our Commission services, European Parliament, the member states, and a wide range of stakeholders. Our Research and Innovation Days conference last September was a particularly rich and important milestone in that work, and we hope that the strategic plan will be formally adopted by the Commission in the course of this month. And in parallel to that, we are finalizing the first work programs for Horizon Europe. So we hope that if the legal text, which was agreed politically at the end of last year, can be finally signed off by the European Parliament and the Council of Ministers in the next few weeks, that we will be able to adopt the first work programs for Horizon Europe in mid-April, and that then we will be able to launch the calls for proposals will flow from that. We will try in some areas where that makes sense, in particular the European Research Council and maybe the European Innovation Council, to give some advance notice with some pre-publications of some of the emerging ideas in order to give all of you and others who may be planning to participate in the calls an opportunity to prepare and see what is coming. So that's what I wanted to say in terms of where we've got to in the preparations of Horizon Europe. I personally am hugely optimistic that we have got a really solid base for making a major contribution to Europe's political ambitions, whether it's on beating our health challenges, the COVID crisis, cancer, whether it's on contributing to the European Green Deal, whether it is in supporting the very necessary progress that we're making in the digital revolution across many different fields, and in many other areas as well. So we're at a very good moment. And that brings me to my final topic, and I'll be brief on this, is on the how all this fits into our emerging ideas, which were supported very much by the German presidency of the Council of Ministers at the end of last year on the future European research area, and how that comes together with the Commission's proposals also for the European education area in what we increasingly call, with the support of our Commissioner Maria Gabriel, who's responsible for both topics, a sort of higher education transformation agenda, which we want to build together with our EU member states and of course stakeholders across the European Union, because excellent education, training and career development are the absolutely vital conditions to attract and retain the best talent in Europe. And the Competitiveness Council of Ministers, which is meeting today under the chair of the Portuguese presidency, is giving a particular focus to building and supporting the careers of researchers in the European Union as we compete in the global race for talent. And so this, I think, will be an important and central dimension of our thinking on the higher education transformation agenda. Already in 2020, we've achieved a certain number of important milestones, in particular by bringing together funding under Horizon 2020 and the Erasmus Plus program in support of the European Universities Alliance program that we've been developing. We now have, I think, 41 European University Alliances which we're supporting, bringing together more than 280 higher education institutions of different sizes. And I think these will act as a very promising testbed to find solutions to some of the challenges that we face in modernizing and sort of spreading the sort of best practice of excellence across universities throughout the European Union, and thus enhance mobility of students, researchers and staff with innovative mobility formats, including different physical, blended, virtual and collaborative online international collaborations, I'm sure enriched by the experiences of remote working that we've all experienced in the past months. And we think these alliances can also help to contribute to build knowledge ecosystems, to adopt a sort of challenge-based approach to learning, teaching and research. And so working through knowledge-creating teams of students, academics, researchers, but also public and private sector actors to build bridges between what Connie was talking about earlier, the academic and research communities and the sort of broader policy-making environment and societal connections that I think are going to be so important. And so that's where I think that the work that we've seen under the German leadership on developing and setting a framework for a more ambitious, more active European research area is so important. And I really welcome the efforts that the Portuguese presidency is now seeking to develop that, in particular with this focus on the individual researchers and creating the right conditions for successful research careers in European universities and research organizations. And so look, in conclusion, just to sort of recall the three main messages that I wanted to share with you today. Firstly, that Denmark is extremely well placed, I believe, to maintain the leading position that you have impressively established in the European research and innovation landscape. And I'm very confident that the University of Southern Denmark will continue to play a very active part in this Danish success story. That secondly, Horizon Europe will build on the achievements of our past research and innovation framework programs to make a major and I think very necessary contribution to the green and digital post-COVID recovery. And thirdly, that the European research area, as it develops, will provide the broader framework for universities and research organizations to support the twin green and digital transition that are so necessary. So thank you very much for your attention, and very happy to answer any questions or respond to comments that you may have. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks very much, Patrick. This was excellent and again very inspirational to get the latest from Brussels, and also the excitement about Horizon Europe that I hope we can spread all over the university. So now we have like 10-12 minutes for questions, both for Henrik, Connie, and Patrick. And we can take the first one that has come in, which I think makes perfect sense, because Connie talked about this, and I think also Patrick acknowledged that we need to include humanities. I mean, we have in many framework programs said, yes, social science and humanities, they are all mainstreamed over the program, they are important and so on. But when it gets tough, and this is where the question comes in, this is the first place we cut. And this unfortunately, I can confirm I'm involved in the work program for the digital industry and space part, and all the good things in the beginning were to include humanities and social science seems to be the ones that get out first when the budget is tough. How can we deal with this? I mean, how can we inspire the humanities people to say, this is not how it's going to be this time. This time we really need you, and there's also budget for you.
Who are you asking, Tom?
Yeah, well, I would ask both of you, in fact, Patrick and Connie, but maybe we should ladies first.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a really good question, because it's obviously easier said than done that we should change the balance there. The Danes who are listening in here would know that for many years it has been sort of we lack natural science people, we lack engineers, things like that, all very well, and that must also be addressed. But there has been this tendency, as is stated in the question, that humanities, it was as if it was sort of a luxury. And I think the only answer is that, I mean, when I sort of see what's going on, take digitalization, I mentioned it, that where there are people in the social sciences coming up with really important stuff about how it impacts the digital things, how it impacts us, how it sort of goes into our brains, what it does with our relation to other people, whatever. The only thing I can say is there's so many interesting things going on, but now to put it a bit black-white, but it is not known to those who have to grant the money, the policymakers. So I think that it is extremely important that the humanities will sort of make it more visible. Sometimes people think that the school of today is the same school that they went to 40 years ago. And sometimes it's the same with these kind of things. So I think that there is also a burden on the humanities themselves to sort of chip in, show their relevance, be visible. And I know that you could say, yes, but we're busy doing so many other things. But my feeling is there is a paradigm shift happening in society right now, where we are moving away from all this rational, we should do more of this and this and this. People are seeking other kind of values. There is something profoundly changing that calls for more focus on the humanities. So I think there is a chance now that the humanities themselves must make more visible what they have to offer to society.
Thank you very much. And Patrick, do you have a view on this?
No. I mean, I absolutely agree with Connie that it is I think a huge moment of opportunity for the humanities and social sciences to contribute to the research activities, which, as I said in my introductory remarks, are going to have much more profound social, economic, human consequences than some of the things that we've been doing before. And then we do have this long-running debate about whether that is best achieved by having a large dedicated budget for SSH activities, which is visible, and we can say, yes, it's 20% more than it was before, so we're obviously making progress? Or do we take seriously what we are committed to, which is the mainstreaming principle? The idea that we should increasingly see that actually when coalitions come forward, when consortia come with their proposals, that the proposals which include a significant and well thought through SSH dimension, so addressing these sort of socioeconomic sort of implications of the research, are the ones which are making more progress in the evaluations. And that does require a confidence and a sort of assertiveness of the promoters of the SSH sort of themes. It also requires an awareness, and there I'm sure we've got lessons to learn as well, in the committees that are doing the evaluation, to give due weight and importance to the SSH components. But I mean, it's also not all bad news. I mean, you know that a huge proportion of the work of the European Research Council is in the area of the humanities and social sciences, and I'm sure that will continue. And as I've said, the European Research Council will be further strengthened under Horizon Europe and as the sort of single largest component, and so that's there. And we will have, of course, dedicated programs as well under our second pillar of Horizon Europe, which will look at certain of the societal and humanities challenges. But I think that the real solution is to make progress further in embedding the SSH dimension in mainstream research programs and projects that are coming forward, and make sure that when they do that, that they get proper credit in the evaluation process, so that those projects which are SSH rich do rise to the top of the pile.
That sounds very good. And I think what I take back is also that we have a job to do in order to encourage our SSH people, to be involved. And we do this. I mean, I explained in the beginning, I'm in the research support, and we do try to explain to people that, we should think this in from the beginning when we do a proposal. So it should not be an add-on, but it's something, that has its own right from the beginning and has to be thought in, as well as the technology. So thank you for these comments. I have another question, which I think, it's one that I must admit it comes from me, but I think it's important. And this is on the missions, because if you look a bit at the history of the missions, and if you look at the famous report from this professor that started the whole thing from Italy, we talked a lot about this man on the moon thing, that the mission was that the framework program should be built on, we want to do really big things. We want to put a man on the moon, and then we collect all the things that are needed to do that. And now it's a bit unclear to me what is this still the idea of the mission, or is the mission something different now? Is it more a coordination effort? Is it more that we try to say, what are we doing in the member states? What are we doing in Europe, and how do we coordinate? Or is it still, will there still be this, tackling the really grand challenges?
Well, from my perspective,
Patrick.
Yeah. I mean, sorry. I mean, Connie, you're well placed for your mission, but I mean, for me, yeah, absolutely. One of the defining features of the missions is about setting an inspirational goal, which will then mobilize sort of activity at all different levels, not just within the European research programs, but in wider EU programs and elsewhere at national level. So, for example, the cities mission, which I mentioned that I'm been working with quite a lot, the goal that they've come up with is to have 100 carbon neutral cities across the European Union by 2030. Now, achieving that is not something that we can do from Brussels all by ourselves. I mean, the estimate is that even for a sort of middle-sized Estonian city of, say, 100,000 people, it might cost 100 billion euros in the next sort of 10 years to make it fully carbon neutral. So obviously, that's got to bring in investment from all sorts of different quarters. But without this high-level, ambitious goal that people can relate to and understand in a very direct way, it'll be extremely difficult then to achieve the sort of coordinated response that you're talking about. So, I mean, I'm not saying that the coordination and the sort of everyone sort of bringing their piece to the party, which you mentioned, is not important. It's vital. But for that to happen, we need to have the sort of man on the moon type objective in order, or as we call it now, the woman on Mars. But the sort of headline objective, which will mobilize and inspire people around a common goal.
Okay, and Connie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just briefly, because it's clear that man on the moon, that's something that everybody can see. Okay, then let's do it. Now we have said, for instance, we must make a resilient Europe by 2030. It's the same kind of grand vision, but it's of course so many different areas that have to be involved in that, and how to get started with that. And there we also have to have sort of a certain amount of practicality around it. So we have, for instance, that we will work with 200 different regions in Europe, and in 100 of them we will make deep demonstration projects on different aspects of what makes a resilient society, what is needed to adapt to climate change. So the vision is this big one, but sometimes you also have, in order not to just have a lot of fluffy words, you also need to get down into the nitty-gritty, and then sometimes it doesn't sound as a big moonshot anymore. But I would agree with Patrick that the 5 visions are still 5 very, very big challenges, and we are sort of targeting how to take a big leap forward on these.
Okay. And if we're down to the nitty-gritty things, I know that there is now a work program for the missions, which is some small funding between 2 and 5 million to get the whole thing started. So how can SDU contribute to this, Connie, or are we involved, or is this, because you talked about a national thing, are we going together, all the Danish universities, or how will this application, and how can we, I'm sure that Henrik and everybody at SDU would like to contribute. How can we contribute?
Yeah, now you mentioned yourself 2 to 5 million euros, and there you can see that sort of from the man on the moon, the 2 to 5 million euros to actually get this done. And that there is a lot of hard work going on in a relatively small secretariat now. And what I said in my intervention was still, you could still, there is this shadow committee for research and for Horizon coordinated. That could be one way. You're also very welcome to sort of feed in to me with some reflections there. And there is a secretariat in Brussels that would be more than keen on sort of getting specific input. And that was why I said, look at the scoping paper, and there you can see are there specific areas where you would like to help us now when we are sort of putting together the very exact implementation plan. Any input is extremely welcome. And you can see who's on the mission board. You may have some research colleagues also that is on that board. You can also go in there. So there are many ways, but be aware that we want your input within, say, the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's where it could still make an impact.
Okay, excellent. We're running out of time. I have been told very specifically that you have another obligation, Connie, that you have to be in another meeting at 11. There was just a very small. Will the missions include cross-Atlantic collaboration? I know it's a very detailed, but is this European or are we going outside Europe?
Well, I mean, if I could on that, I mean, Connie probably has a view, but I mean, of course, the challenges that we're seeking to address with the missions are, to a large extent, global challenges. So we clearly need to engage with partners around the world, and the new American administration in particular, with its new sort of approach on climate and sustainability and international collaboration more generally, is hugely good news. But the focus on the work of the mission boards, I think it's fair to say, up till now, has been on what can we do within the in the European Union with the associated countries to Horizon Europe, and the implementation plans will have a strong focus on Europe. But just, I mean, there is an international opportunity out there. And it's part of the broader sort of international engagement of Horizon Europe that we want to see. So, for example, I'm personally involved in something called Mission Innovation, which is a community of nations across the world committed to clean energy innovation. And within that, we've been working with the Global Covenant of Mayors, a group of city organizations from around the world. And we've been discussing whether the lessons learned from the work of our city's mission in Europe could inspire us to have a sort of global level mission on cities as part of this international mission innovation framework. So, I mean, as with all European research and innovation, we need to be open to the world. We need to engage with partners wherever we find them.
Excellent. I want to thank you all, Henrik Dam, Connie Hedegaard, Patrick Seil. This was, for me, a very good kickoff of Horizon Europe. As you said, Patrick, it's timely. Now we have work to do. We have 3 inspiring days. You have work to do. And I want to thank you very much. I hope I'll see you in the future. I hope SDU will contribute to Horizon Europe in a very sustainable manner. Thank you very much, and have a very good day to everybody. And thanks for listening in from everybody. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Good luck. Bye.
Tak, Connie. Det var fantastisk.
Jamen selv tak. Bliver jeg bare her til det næste, jeg skal?
Der skal vi nok lige have fat i Esben.
Ja, det er bare, fordi jeg logger mig ikke ud, for jeg tror ikke, jeg har et andet link i hvert fald. Jamen tak, det gik jo, og Patrick var der, da han skulle være der og så videre, så det var jo fint.
Jeg synes, det gik rigtig godt. Men vi skal lige have chefen. Esben, er du der?